Hello and welcome to today's episode of Activating Magic. I'm your host, Darla Ledoux, and I am here with my friend, mentor, colleague, soul family, the fabulous Daniel Hyman.
Thank
And we
you.
have no idea where this conversation will go.
We don't,
Welcome.
but that's what's on my arm. Celebrate the unknown. So I'd love to set the intention that we celebrate something at the end of this
Ooh,
session today.
okay. I'm here for it.
Let's do it.
I love it. I love it. No one has ever set an intention at the beginning of the interview before. So I think we're already just diving right in.
I love that.
Um, so I just want to share a little with people. I've known you for a long time. We were connected by a mutual friend around the topic of retreats. You had a retreat center. I was teaching people how to host retreats, and then we reconnected later on a retreat as attendees. And so, really got to know each other. We ended up getting snowed in and lived together for a couple of days. And just, I have such a profound love for you and deep respect for who you are in this world and your magic. And so, thank you for saying yes. And just how would you like to be known in this conversation?
I'd like to be known as just a man on a journey, a man on a journey who knows everything and yet nothing all at the same time, and who just has a really, really, really deep passion for helping people reclaim the power of oneness, their oneness with the world and the universe, and really just helping people reclaim their power, their sovereignty.
I totally forgot to say in the introduction that after after we were on retreat together and everything, when you said reclaim the power of oneness, I got so present to how amazing I feel and how, I got divorced shortly after we were snowed in together. And I was in the process of deciding whether to get divorced. And I tuned in and I thought, who do I know that I trust who really knows the laws of the universe and believes that everything is happening for us, who can hold space for me while I figure out why the fuck this is happening for me. And I thought of you. And so, we worked together for years through my divorce and the healing afterward. And I just, when you said reclaim the power of oneness, it's like, yes, yes to that. So thank
Amazing.
you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Um, I feel like I want you to share a bit about your story because you've had quite a journey around learning about abundance and how the universe provides. Can you share a little bit of your journey?
Sure. I think I'd like to start by sharing that what I learned is that safety comes from within. And what I've learned is that what I learned on my journey and what abundance has taught me is that abundance looks very different from prosperity, and that abundance is such a gift because abundance, I look at prosperity in terms of life becomes easier, right? You have more options, more access, life becomes easier. Abundance is more about always having what you need when you need it. But abundance really opened my mind and my heart to see how the things that I wanted can manifest in a very different way than I thought they could or I thought they would. And that really brought magic into my life, is seeing how basically I could manifest things that I need and even wanted at different times in my life, but they came in ways that I would say before that I never wanted them to come in that way.
Mm.
And that was such a gift to see that my circumstances and conditions did not define me, and that there is
Mm.
abundance is always here, and that I can have all my needs met and I can have all my desires met in a way that is very magical and that opens me up to more abundance and prosperity down the road. I think I learned that there's always something that I want more than the thing that I want the most in the moment. And I think that's true for everybody, all my clients. And
Mm,
and what that is we want the ability to infinitely create what we want the most as that evolves throughout the rest of our lives. And unless we open up to abundance, the prosperity in that is much harder to attain, at least from my perspective, because the mind is only going to project what it feels safe and comfortable with. And that's typically to avoid pain and trauma from the past. And so if yes, it's great to be specific in what you want, but there's also benefit in learning to not be specific. And
mhm,
because that's where like the unknown will open up and you will be able to learn all these other things that that your soul wanted you to know that wouldn't
mm,
have been possible without abundance.
mm.
And so hopefully that makes sense what I just said.
Yeah, I have so many questions. The first is you said, oh, there it came in a format that I never wanted it to come in. Can
Sure.
you be specific about that?
Absolutely. So 2018, I think my second worst fear in my entire life came true. I had a beautiful retreat center in Sedona. It was a dream home. And, I was a multimillionaire. I didn't need to work. And all of a sudden, that came crashing down really quickly. And I lost my home in Sedona. And I ended up in San Jose, California, with like just north of like $300 to my name, a quarter tank of gas. And I didn't believe that I knew a single soul. And I had about like hours, let's say, to be checked out of an Airbnb, and my cell phone was behind, and my car payment was behind, and I had no idea where I was going to go. And I thought I'd been betrayed, rejected, abandoned by the universe, and I thought that my life was purposeless and had no meaning. And next thing you know, like this voice comes in and it tells me to call my friend Helene. And me and my pride and my ego, I'm like, why am I going to call my friend Helene? She lives in Florida. I'm in San Jose, California. I haven't talked to her in 2 years, and I have too much pride to ask her for money. What good is it going to do? And I just kept hearing it. And so I just responded and I reached out and I call her my star sister because we're very close. And I was like, hey, star sister, what's good? How are you? She responds right away. And she says to me, where are you? And I was like, I'm in San Jose. And within minutes, she responds and she goes, you're never going to believe this. Me and Penelope, that's her daughter, were in Fairfax, California. We just moved there. Like we had just moved there and we have a new house. We miss you. We love you. You have to come visit. And you have to come visit. And I was like, wow, did that just happen? I was hours away from being on the street or at least having to sleep in my car. And all of a sudden, this amazing guidance came in and I followed through. And here it was a solution. And so I was feeling a lot of shame because the person who she knew, I was not that version of myself anymore, or at least
Mhm.
that's the story I was telling myself. And so I ended up like calling her and I say, hey, I would love to come. I'm not this person that you know. Here's the deal. I'm homeless. I lost everything to my name. Do you still want me there? And she was like, of course, your family, you've helped us out so much. Why don't you come, stay? And so she invited me to stay for 2 weeks and that turned into a year. And during that year, what I learned was a whole other method for manifestation and creation. I think before that, I had coached a lot of people and operated from, you think what you want and you put all your action towards it. And I had a really strong identity wrapped up into my ability, my sense of worth based on what I did and what I created. And when I was there, obviously I had to rebuild my life and I would try to go get a job working at a taco stand, at a pizza place as a dishwasher. And this is humiliating, right? Based on my life and who I was. But
That's the part that you never wanted to
that's the
have
part
it
that I
come that
never,
way.
ever, ever wanted, right? That's the part that I never wanted, right? I never wanted to experience homelessness and having no money. And here I was living off $5 a day, have no sense of security and stability. And long story short, I started to get really angry because I believed that I was going to have to live like that for the rest of my life because nothing that I knew to do from the past was working.
Mm.
People wouldn't believe me. Oh, go get a job, go do. I applied everywhere. I'm talking about minimum wage jobs and I couldn't get hired. But every day I'd go hike to the top of this mountain and I'd bring her dog Lulu, who I love more than anything. And I'd be on the top of this mountain and I'd come back and I'd go into meditation all day. And finally, this voice came to me and said, "Aren't you curious why this is happening to you?" And I said, "Okay." And so, like, I was guided to just start going within my body, right? And so every time I would feel horrible or shame or guilt or lower emotions in my body, I would try to do something about it to change my circumstances and conditions to make me feel better inside. But but what I learned was the opposite, and that wasn't working. And so all of a sudden I learned a method and a process to go within and to locate trapped energy and emotions in my body. And I'd sit there for hours clearing this energy, and I'd come out of this meditation. And next thing you know, the second I'd come out, I found that I could feel so amazing. I could feel peaceful. I could feel safe. I could feel secure without anything in my life shifting. And then next thing you know, like old clients would call from years back and say, "Hey, can you help us?" And I'd be like, "Are you sure you want to work with me? My life is a mess right now." And they're like, "Yeah, you helped us make millions of dollars, or you helped us develop this relationship. Why wouldn't we want you to help?" And so literally what I learned to do was sit in a room, and any time that I wanted something in my life, instead of having to go out and force it, if I just went within my body, found where my resistance to this thing was, because if it's not here, there's resistance to it somewhere. And yes, things have come in divine timing. So it's not like you can control this either. But I learned to shift energy in my body and watch results magically appeared. And next thing you know, I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. And I thought I had tapped like the ultimate superpower, which is the ability to literally just do what I want to do all day, shift some energy in my body, and literally have the whole world change around me. And so more than having money, more than having anything, what I wanted was to be so connected to myself in the universe. And I wanted to be the most powerful, high performing version of myself. It looked nothing like I thought that was going to be, but that's that is abundance, right? Because I never have to worry about what my circumstances and conditions are.
Yeah.
I just have to be present, receive the moment, go within my body, respond to what I want from neutral energy, from clearing out the old. And next thing you know, there's nothing that can't show up.
Mhm.
There's nothing that can't happen.
First, I want to say, you said, people would call you and you'd say, "Are you sure you want to work with me?" Like,
Yeah.
who says that?
Right. Well, for me, integrity was always the most important thing,
I love that. You're
you
just
know,
like,
and
"I don't have money. Can I help you get money? I don't know."
yeah, integrity was the most important thing. And one of the things I had learned in the past 6 months is, you know, I thought that as someone who facilitates transformational healing work and as a coach who also facilitates for many other coaches and healers, right? That was a big chunk of my practice. I thought that I had to have it all together. And I thought that I had to have it all perfect. And that if I had
Yeah.
hardship or pain or challenges, that I like something was wrong and I shouldn't be doing what I was doing. And so what that did was I learned that it was okay, that I'm human, right? And yeah, like integrity is important. And I was so embarrassed still about being found out about where I was homeless and losing everything that I was so scared that someone was going to find out that I wanted to like out myself and be just radically honest before it could come back to me. And what I found was that like it just liberated me so much. And what I learned was that my value comes from my presence and who I am, not what I've achieved and not that. And that's one of the things I really love about what you do is because you teach people how to access their magic through presence.
Mhm.
And you teach them that it doesn't matter how long you've been doing what you've been doing, who you've served in the past, that like what people really want is presence and connection and to be able to express themselves freely. And that's one of the things that I think I really dig about you. And what you do is you teach that, right? Like that's a hard thing sometimes to teach. And I feel like you've created this amazing way to really teach that to people and help them access
Yeah.
those parts of themselves.
Yeah, it's like people know how to do that. Like the magical people listening to this podcast know how to do that naturally, but think that they have to be something else to add value or need to bundle it in something. I mean, we need to bundle it, right? So
Sure.
people know that they want it, but that's really what they're buying, and we need to know that.
Yeah.
Um, your story makes me think of an exercise you had me do. I don't know if you remember the specifics of this.
Uh-huh.
But I wrote on a piece of paper, of course, it was pretty in colored markers, and it said, I am inadequate and I always will be. And you had me meditate with that. And I, you know, God, I think I cried for a while, right? About, oh, poor me and my inadequacy. And what do I do with this? I don't understand. And then eventually it was like, oh, yeah, that's so true. That's so true. Okay, great. Now what? What do I do with this? And that's what I'm hearing you say is like to make friends with the thing that we resist the most.
For sure. Yeah, I used to learn again, like when I shared my story a few seconds ago, like I would think about like when I became homeless, it's like, oh, like how am I going to eat today? Right? Like how am I going to eat today? And then when money would come in, right? When a little bit of money would come in, I don't even feel safe spending that money because I don't even know what a budget is, right? So I boiled it down to like for $5 a day, I could eat a quarter box of red lentil pasta and a quarter of tomato sauce, right? And I would sit there every day and be so miserable that this is my life, right? I would spend $200 on a meal before that frequently. And now here I am, like maybe hoping to get like 200, like a half a month to get that through. But what you're saying is true. And so that's what I had to do is I for a long time I was trying to get my mind and use my spiritual wisdom to hijack my human's emotions and convince my human to be okay with the fact that I was homeless and living off $5 a day. And that's part of like what my guides came to teach me is that I'm never going to get Daniel, my human, to be okay living off $5 a day. And the more that I try to convince him and give him some spiritual BS of, oh, it's all meant to happen, all that's true, right? But he doesn't want to hear that, right? He wants security and safety. And
You
he
want some
wants to know that he's
sushi.
going to be able to eat lobster and filet mignon again one day and go to fancy restaurants. And so once I finally started to stop trying to convince him that it was okay to be okay about that, right? What I did was I just accepted that I was never going to be okay living off $5 a day. And so
Yeah.
what I did was when I accepted that, I stopped re-traumatizing myself. The same trauma that I was inflicted onto me when I was young that I wasn't in control with, people trying to get me to be something other than who I am for their safety, to meet their expectations, right? That's traumatizing when people want you to change who you naturally are for their safety. And so I was basically self-inflicting the same trauma that others had inflicted onto me. And so as soon as I stopped
Mm.
inflicting that trauma onto myself, I freed myself. And I love that that had such a powerful impact on you because
Mm.
that's what I say about imposter syndrome. It's a paradox, right? I have had millions of dollars in my life. I've had no money in my life. And what I learned was the same shame I felt because I didn't have the money that I wanted, right? Is the same shame I felt when I had no, like once I had the money, I felt that shame because I was scared I was going to lose it. So I felt shame with the
Yeah.
money and without the money. And that's when I learned that it's a paradox and that there's nothing you can do to change that you feel that way, except accept it and love it. And when you can sit there and accept the unacceptable, and when you can love the unlovable, right, then you are seeing things from the eyes of source, which we're one with. And when you see things through the eyes of source, that's unconditional love. And it no longer serves me, humanity, the universe to stay stuck in that pattern because the greatest gift that I can do is evolve through an experience of presence. right? And so when you can love the unlovable and accept the unacceptable, you see it through the eyes of unconditional love. The lesson is learned, and you're able to your circumstances will shift pretty quickly, and you'll go to the next lesson or the next cycle of transformation
Right.
because it never ends. It just changes.
Yeah. I have a story, like a concrete example. I was at this event with, high level entrepreneurs, and it was, 20 people in the room or whatever. And the event went in a certain flow, and we each got 3 times in front of the room. And we're on the last day, and I didn't get my third time. And I said something to the facilitator about it. And he was like, yeah, yeah, I know. But he didn't hear me correctly, right? Like he was assuming whatever I was going to say. And so I never got my time, right? And then I'm like, okay, what do I do about this? Like I feel like I didn't feel scarcity. I didn't feel like, oh no, I'm not, I didn't get what I came for or whatever. I was totally chill. But I did feel like, but I want these people, attention on me. Like that was kind of the point. And so
Sure.
the old me that wasn't adequate, like would have totally freaked out about this. And I just, that we had a Facebook group, and I was just like, hey guys, this happened. Embarrassing post. Like I didn't like cause a fuss, and I didn't get my time. And anyway, I've had individual conversations with, I would say 70% of the people in the room. Like I've gotten so much from it. But I could put myself in a place where I would have felt either too much shame to ask or pretended like I didn't care, and I was able to feel all the feelings and say the things, and I just, as we're thinking about this inadequate thing, like yeah, I could be just inadequate. There was no right way out of this
Mhm.
situation. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yeah.
So it was all just created as a choice. And it's a silly example, but like how often are people in angst about things that really that is unnecessary? I definitely would have been, 5 years ago.
I love that. What's coming to me just to share is I think that look, spiritual growth, development, like coach, all that, we've come so far, right? We've come so far, and yet I think we're never going to know anything really. But what I love about that is I feel like for me, at least on my journey, there was I used to judge myself so harshly for feeling that inadequacy, right? I'd be like, oh, my healing didn't work. Oh, I got to go more healing, right? Like there's more. And after like 15 years or 13, right? Like to still feel like I'm like, okay, it's time for a perspective shift, right? And so what I think is important, what I'd love just to share with people who are listening to this right now is, look, it doesn't matter how much personal growth and development, how much healing work you do, you are never in control of the first thought or emotion to what you're receiving in the present moment. You are only in control of how you respond to that reaction. And I feel like so many people judge themselves based on the first thought or the emotion when that's the gift. That's the gift because it's showing you where your mind and your body are literally conditioned to an old program, and it makes it really easy. It's not easy to feel that and to have to face people feeling that. But if you can just understand that all you need to do is take one step back, right? And respond in a way that's in alignment with the universal laws, right? To the reaction, that's like a magic point right there, right? That's where transformation takes place. And it's also like integration. It takes time. So you got to put in reps, right? But
Yeah.
we're not playing for those feelings and emotions to never be there. What we're playing for is the ability to navigate them with ease and with speed and to not let them take us out when they show up. Because the truth is that, like, anytime we're ready to up level, we're going to step into the unknown, and change in the unknown are the two greatest fears or two of the greatest fears of humankind. And so to me, when those feelings come up or those reactions come up, that's a gift. That's an opportunity for an up level right there. And I think that, we can either there's the judgment and then there's our judgment about the judgment. And if we're never going to be able to make that judgment go away. But what we are able to do is interrupt the pattern and bankrupt the judgment about the judgment. And when we do that, that's where we really like step into a whole other level of like agency and sovereignty in our life.
Bankrupt the judgment about the judgment. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, you said people, this feels so good and juicy for activating magic. You said people are trying to get me to be someone other than I am for their safety. And I think that conditioning is what has conditioned people out of their magic. Can you say more about that?
Yeah. Well,
For
I think
their
that
safety.
yeah, I think that when we're children, right? Like our parents, like we talk about generational healing, right? And I think that our parents, you know, our parents weren't privy to all the resources and tools and the awareness that's here today, right? At the level. And so things were very structured and set in very specific ways, right? And so I think that our parents had a lot of unresolved trauma and they made a lot of agreements that they were never going to be like their parents, yet they didn't know how to be any other way. And so here we are as children coming in to heal all of the beliefs that come before. So of course we're going to be disruptors, and of course we're going to challenge the status quo, and of course we're not going to be what our parents want to be. But when we all of a sudden start acting in a way that triggers our parents' fear or an adult's fear or like a caretaker's fear, right? They become afraid, they internalize that and make it mean something about them. And of
What are
course,
they afraid of?
I think they're afraid that like somehow if you don't look the way that they think you need to look, that they're going to be judged or they're a bad parent or you're going to end up just, going down a bad path in life, right? And so they condition us and they judge us. And so we're used to that, right? We're used to that. And so we have to learn to identify when that shows up in our life.
And then you said we do it to ourselves.
And then we do it to ourselves. We do it to ourselves because in the moment, let me see how I want to say this here. If you can understand that as a child, you're helpless and you're powerless, you have no choice. You have to follow your adult who's your caretaker. And when they feel unsafe or they feel angry or like they're not in total acceptance of you, you then force yourself to change to become whatever you need to for their acceptance and approval so that you can feel safe in their safety, right? And what you're really learning is that safety lives outside of you. Safety lives in how other people perceive you, receive you, respond to you. And so then as adults, when we have these same feelings and emotions that came up as a child, we're programmed to automatically look outside of ourselves to shift our circumstances and conditions to then create that safety within to repeat the patterns as childhood. But we are here to reprogram that pattern and create the safety within. And when we do that, the whole world shifts. But here's the thing, like you can get really good at doing what I'm saying, but no matter what, we are not meant to forego our human desire for safety and security outside of ourselves. That is part of our human experience. And we are meant to like honor that part of our human experience at the highest possible level. But it's how we relate and respond to that. That's the thing that makes the difference. And so one of the greatest gifts we can give to ourselves is honoring that need for safety, but also letting go of what we think that safety looks like and how we cultivate it. And once we start practicing creating safety within and then allowing our circumstances and conditions to shift outside of us, that's when life really becomes good because you no longer fear the unknown, you embrace it, right? You know how to navigate uncertainty and literally like shift the entire universe to work in your favor. And now that's when you'll start taking bigger risks, saying yes to more things, and you can open up and hold more abundance in your nervous system as well.
Wow. So your human is always going to crave safety. And we shouldn't judge that the human craves safety.
Correct.
And I guess, can you talk about the human and the higher self or the human and the oversoul or how you want to distinguish that?
Yeah, I feel guided to give a little explanation and then hopefully this will make sense. So imagine, I want everybody who's listening to take a second and imagine that you are at a park and you have a beautiful, let's say a beautiful 4-year-old daughter, and you love your daughter so much. She's the most beautiful, precious, innocent thing. You're at the park, you're laid out on a picnic blanket, and your daughter is playing with a doll. And this doll is her favorite doll, and she doesn't care what's happening around her. She just loves her doll, and it is making her feel so good. Next thing you know, some jerk comes along, rips the doll from your daughter, absolutely rips the doll, and takes off. Here's the question. Do you chase after the person that stole the doll and leave your daughter crying, or do you go comfort your daughter first and then figure out the doll later? Well, unfortunately, it's a no-brainer, right? Of course, we're going to go pick up our daughter, hold, comfort her. But in real life, we are literally abandoning our child when somebody comes and steals our safety, or our mind is telling us that something just got stripped from us that we want, or that's providing safety and security. What do? We leave our precious little inner child crying, and we go chase the thing. And that's really where we fall short. We need to learn to pick up ourselves and hold ourselves first, calm the energy, and then go after what we want. So I think, that wanted to come through really strong right there. Can you repeat your question now?
Yes. Yes. Just some distinction around when you say my human, right? My human wants safety. Like, who are we? Who is our human, and how do you relate to these dynamics?
Yeah. So, okay. Thank you for bringing that back. So our human, we have a human, right? Like I have a human body, but I am not my mind and I am not my body. I am the consciousness that exists inside of this, that is incarnated inside of this. And what does that mean? It means that I am conditioned in my mind. I am conditioned in my body, right? And I have feelings and I have thoughts, but they're just running on auto. Like that's never going to stop until the day that this body is ready to rest and my soul is ready to leave, right? I'm always going to have that going. And the goal is, I think that a lot of spiritual work teaches you to like detach from that, which is important. You need to learn to detach from your emotions and your thoughts. But I think in the past couple of years, we've learned a lot and we've come a long way. But I think what we've been taught is like, we don't want to have these thoughts and emotions. Let's detach and make it go away and only be this God self, right? Only be this enlightened being. But that's not what we're here for.
And fix the part of us that has those emotions.
Exactly. We're only here to observe it. We're not here to change it. We're here to observe it. And as we observe it, we're here to pray or to make a wish or to ask, however you want to relate to that prayer, to restore peace in the moment. And then that's when the magic really happens. And so either mindset coaching teaches you to go all in on your humanity, right? And like just go all in and use your mind and put the pedal to the metal. And then most spiritual teaching says, let go of it all, right? And here's the thing, depending on where you enter your transformation. So if you're someone that's been all in on your humanity and all in on coaching, your breakthrough is to detach and step into your spirituality. And just because you do the opposite, you will start having all these amazing results that weren't there previous. But what happens is you then make an agreement with yourself that, oh, it's so bad to be human and it's so bad to go after all these things. And then now everything is a threat with like humanity, or it's bad or it's wrong, because you have all this freedom that you didn't have for a long time. But once you stay over here in this spiritual realm, you end up like denying your human needs, right? Or you rationalize them or you justify them. And then you're actually limiting your spirituality because you're here to bring the height of your spirituality and you're here to integrate that into the depth of your humanity into one cohesive experience. And so that's a lot of my work now that I teach is how do you navigate the human journey where you can bring both your infinite God self to the present moment along with the depth of your humanity in the present moment, bring them both together in one experience. And that's the example that I gave, right? It's how does that work? When something doesn't look or feel the way you want it to, you don't chase after the thing. You first go within, connect with your inner child with the love, And then after your energy is calm and relaxed and you're back into that state of abundance, right? Then you sit there and start asking the universe for what you want or taking aligned action towards it. And now what you've done is you haven't given one or the other. You've integrated both the height of your spirituality and the depth of your humanity together in one. And that is the sweet spot where you're the most powerful version of yourself, no matter what you've achieved, haven't achieved, no matter how much you have, don't have, it doesn't matter. If you can bring the height of your spirituality and the depth of your humanity together in one experience in the moment, that's it. There's nothing more that you need to achieve than to be able to learn how to do that.
This question is coming through. I don't know if I've never asked you this. I don't know if you have an answer, but when you lost everything, when you lost the house, like prior to that, do you feel like you were at the height of your spirituality and less in the physical, or were you more in the physical and needed to get more into or is that not a relevant question?
No, that is a very relevant question. I'm going to say that I was at the height of my spirituality, right? And here's what I learned. And I was at the height of my spirituality, but I also had a boatload of money in the bank. And so when you have a lot of money in the bank and you have this access to this like this energy, this God energy that flows through all of us, right? I'm not like that
Yeah.
energy flows through all of us, but we either access it or we don't access it. And so it's like having money in that's a dangerous and low self-esteem. That's a dangerous combination to have. Not bad, not wrong, but it's very limiting because where most people would have to like get into the material world to go get their needs met in this, I would
Mm.
just keep swiping my credit card or writing checks or throwing money at things. And so it was a really tough lesson to learn. But yeah, like, dude, I was in Sedona in this amazing crib and I was just tapped into this high vibe energy all the time and just thought I was like so enlightened, which I wasn't. And because I wasn't anywhere in my body. And I was just like, okay, sure, no problem. Here's more money. Here's more money. So
So
yeah.
you were leaving your body, really. And so you didn't have to deal with the self-esteem state of your human.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, meditation can be just as much of a hindrance as it can be a bypass just as much as it is a tool to engage. And I was definitely using my spirituality to bypass and avoid, and then using my money to take care of my physical needs to not have to deal with like people in the world.
Yeah. Let's
Uh,
talk about manifesting. Um, I'm thinking of like when I say magic, it's your divine guidance, and it really is in the present, like you talked about. So, if we are adjusting ourselves based on the past, thinking we can control the future, we shut down our magic. Whereas if we're in the present and receptive, magic is there. Oh, I mean, it's always there, right? We're
mhm.
accessing it. And you talked earlier about I would go into meditation and I would find the place within myself where the resistance was, and then the world would shift. And I heard this story once on a podcast where there was a forest fire in the Andes, and like the government brought all the shaman together and they all looked at each other and they knew it was this one woman's job. And she went into her tent and came out 3 days later and the fire stopped. And they said, "What happened?" And she said, I found the fire within myself. And so, can you talk a little bit about that if someone's resonating with that idea for manifestation? Because you mentioned several times like don't get specific, don't get attached to the outcome, like the mindset way of like this is what I want and go for it is faulty, maybe. So can you share some tips for that?
Sure. I don't think it's faulty. I think that it's
Mm.
just an experience we have on our way in our spiritual evolution. And I think that we all have to have those experiences to open up to greater possibilities. And I
Okay.
also think that we're not anywhere. And so I know personally right now, and I want to answer that question, but I'm at a place now where I'm now having to say yes to a lot of things I once had to say no to in order to
Hmm.
get like in order
Hmm.
to bring in what the universe and my higher self are asking me to receive. And so I'm in a place where I'm actually getting really specific now, but my relationship to the specificity is very different and my responses are very different. And so I think it's important that not to, at least my perspective, everyone's different, is not to create rules, right? That's where true freedom comes from. Freedom doesn't come from transformation. Freedom comes from having many cycles of transformation, learning the expansion as well as the limits within each lesson, right? Within each cycle, and then having the ability to understand, if I do this, this is the result that I get, or this is the outcome that I get. And then in the moment, being willing to choose what you want. And that's where real power comes from. Real power doesn't come from not doing old things. It comes from being able to do old things by choice and responsibility, along with many other things. And so that's where I think choice and agency and freedom come from. But in terms of going within my body and the fire, the it's true. Like, it's rooted in the ancient Hawaiian healing art Ho'oponopono. And a lot of people think it's, I'm sorry, I love you, thank you, please forgive me. And yes, that's a part of it. But most people don't go into the deeper teachings of Ho'oponopono, which is it's about taking 100% responsibility for your experience. It's not blaming yourself that there's that fire happening, right? But it is taking responsibility that you're here in the moment, experiencing this fire. And that's because you, as your higher self, wanted to witness your human having an experience with this fire. And we're not meant to know ahead of time why that's here. We're just meant to feel it. That's the difference between humans and spirit guides, is when we are source, we are all knowing. Past, present, future, it all exists at once, and it's all mental. So there's no fear because there's no unknown. There's no change because it's already there. But the whole point of coming down into this human body is presence, right? It's to have an experience of getting to know ourselves as source through a multi-sensory experience in our body. And so for whatever reason, it's better not to know. For whatever reason, like we learn backwards for a reason, right? For whatever reason, we are meant to be in an experience and have this infinite knowledge and bring this infinite knowledge, bring our magic, like you teach, bring our magic into the present moment to respond to whatever is here for us. And when we do that, we fulfill our service mission to humanity and source, because nothing happens by accident and everything is happening for a reason. And if we think we need to know ahead of time, our human mind is going to put so many limits on what's happening. And so that's why it's best to just like be in the unknown, trust that it's here for a reason. And again, not think about it, but get into the body and feel it. And when we feel it, that's when everything again shifts, shifts around us. But that's true. Like what you just said is true. It seems unreal, but yes, when things are not going well in front of us or things are a certain way, we should always first look within ourselves, shift our energy, and the entire world will completely change.
I'm thinking of what you said about if we think we need to know ahead. And, I've been making some decisions in my work, and I'm thinking of the best way to describe it, but this idea was presented to me. We'll put it that way. And my brain said no, but my body was like, oh, that's interesting. And so I remained open and slept on it and kind of sat with it. And I'm like, oh, I could feel the creativity of a yes showing up, right? Like I just started getting different ideas and downloads and da da da. But my brain is still like, and it's interesting you said, going back to old things, but in a different way. My brain was like, oh, I've done that. Right. And so I don't know how that could be interesting, but I was feeling very creative about it. And so I decided to say yes. And I'm like, okay, I'm a yes for this. I'm doing it. And then my brain starts, my human starts going, oh, and then this, and then this, and then that, like future casting. Right. And so just yesterday, I noticed it and I'm like, oh, isn't that interesting how I can't just say yes because it feels fun and creative. It's like I need a whole story around it. I don't know if other people listening will be relating to this, but like, how do you, I have my own thoughts, but what do you say around that when someone gets attached to the outcome or like I almost can see that I had to explain to myself all of the reasons this is going to be okay in order to just trust my initial magic response.
Sure. I would say that that is a function that, first of all, it's completely normal and human, right? And like we should not make ourselves wrong for that. And there's nothing wrong with doing that, right? And there's nothing wrong with even attempting to go do that. It's just, can you take actions towards it without being transactional with your actions, right? Like, can you take the actions or have all this and not be transactional and just do it for fun? Because here's what happens, like most people don't realize there is like a feather, like the smallest smither between exhilaration, right, and fear. Okay. And so like the second the second things start to look the way that we want them to, right? We a lot of times think we're really excited, but really, like the second that happens, a lot of us are scared that the other shoe is going to drop, right? And so our energy then goes back into avoidance and protection, right? And so it's really important to give ourselves permission to do that, but also be open for other things to manifest and not be attached to the way it looks or how it looks. So I think if you're somebody who can, prophesize or see that far into it, but you know how to take that action and not be transactional and not be attached, I think that's a really powerful, powerful thing to do. And I think that also too, that's just the mind, right? Like that's just the mind looking for a false sense of confidence or a false sense of security in order to give you the confidence to move forward. Yet, again, we need to honor our humanity because our human needs that. We need that to be able, like, we need that to be able to move forward. So that's why I'm saying, like, I don't think it's bad. I think we should like let ourselves do it, but being open to like not being transactional in the process.
Can you define transactional?
Transaction
Yeah.
is um I do this and I'm going to get that, right? Or hey, oh, universe, I finally, like, this is a good one that I've been going through a lot. I finally conjured the courage to break through and make a different choice. And I did it. And you still didn't give me the result that I wanted. How dare you, right? You gave me this vision. I followed my magic. I followed my guidance and you let me down, right? You betrayed me, right? And so that's just like,
Yes.
that's being transactional, right? Like you just,
Yes.
you just don't know. You just don't know what's going to
I'm
happen.
really glad I asked that question because I guarantee people are like, oh, yeah, I've been there,
Yeah.
mad at the universe. Like I followed all
Oh,
the rules.
yeah, we all have those like calm. I'll be a little bit censored. We all have these FU universe moments, right?
Uh,
And those are pivotal moments. But especially right now, if you look at AI that's coming out, AI is just a reflection of a major leap that humanity is taking in consciousness, right? We're stepping into a place of greater ease, a new way to identify and get value for ourselves. And I don't want to get into the politics of AI or anything like that, but if we just look at it like humanity's taking a massive leap, and that's what AI is reflecting to us,
mm,
right? So these FU universe, so the universe is purposely not giving us what we want in the way that we want it because it's bringing up all of our beliefs around rejection and betrayal, right? But what's really rejection and betrayal and abandonment is our relationship to creation and manifestation. And we're trying to control what things look like because that's what feels safe to receive. But there's this like grander level of abundance that wants to come in, but we have to be open and we have to be curious to see things in a new way. And if we keep on being really specific right now and wanting things to look a certain way, no. What we need to do is like, okay, it didn't look the way we wanted to. We feel disappointed, we feel rejected, but what's my pattern? How do I normally respond to that? And what's a new way that I can respond to that? And so I feel like it's a gift when things don't work out the way we want it to. And that's because it's an opportunity to say, okay, like these are my beliefs around rejection and disappointment and betrayal and abandonment. what if I let go and got curious and I questioned what else is here for me? It's what's shifting isn't our reality, it's the way we create our reality. And that is the most powerful thing that can shift is it's time to change the way we create change, right? Think about like all the tools and all the things and all the changes we're making, but what really isn't being talked about is changing the way we create change. And I feel like that's what AI is representing to us is it's a new way to create. And so of course our inner world is what's creating our outer world. And so that's what's being asked of us right now is to change the way we manifest, change the way we create change. And for that to happen, we have to see where we're trying to control things and then how we respond when things don't work the way we want, and then being open to something new so that a reality beyond the limits of our mind that comes from such a higher place can manifest through us and we can really bring in a whole new era of consciousness and way we do things.
I love it. I love it. I'm thinking of one of the things you taught me around creating to create rather than creating from fear, right? Creating to control and create safety or the illusion of safety, but to create just for the sake of it. So as I think about my decision I said yes to, it was totally like now, after I went through the whole cycle of coming up with all of the human reasons to get myself to do the thing or justify that I did the thing, whatever, is in that moment, it felt creative for the sake of it.
Right. And think about it. If you had, let's say it took you let's say you were in those thoughts for that 1 hour, right? Would you rather spend that 1 hour, if all exists is the present moment and that's what opens you up to that, how would you want to spend that hour? Would you rather spend that hour being upset, like you don't have access to your magic or creativity or life isn't going well? Or would you rather spend that hour having fun, thinking about all these things, even if
Right.
these things don't ever come together? During that hour, these things allowed you to exist in that moment in a higher vibratory state, which then who knows what that unleashed for you out in the world that
Right.
either came in later or hasn't even come in yet, but it's on its way to you right now.
Yeah. At minimum, it kept me from backtracking.
Right. Yes, I love that.
Okay, Daniel, tell me, I know people get a sense of it from this conversation. I freaking loved that about transactional. So you help people manifest the life they want. You help them be comfortable with the unknown by really understanding these dynamics of how their human works and their soul works and how they work together.
One thing I know after serving probably over 1,000 clients in the past 10 years, my journey has showed me that there's just four essential shifts that we need to create, four blocks we need to be aware of, four relationships. All these things are interchangeable. They're the same thing, right? There's so much language and verbiage out there in the world, right? But blocks aren't really blocks. They're relationships and they're changes and all these things. But ultimately, imposter syndrome is a paradox, okay? And it impacts us in three ways. So the first way that imposter syndrome impacts us is that we avoid taking risk. We're afraid that we're not good enough and we don't have what we need, and we fear taking risk to step in and even say yes to the desire or take the actions to manifest the desire. The second way that imposter syndrome impacts us is fulfillment. So that's on the other side, right? That's what I say. You're either screwed if you do and screwed if you don't. The second way is fulfillment. We've manifested the thing that we wanted, but now we're living in fear that we're going to lose it or we're not good enough with it, right? And that's the second way that imposter syndrome really impacts us. And then the third level or the third way is growth, right? So maybe we found a way to take the risk and manifest the thing, and maybe we found fulfillment with it, but now we don't want to lose that. And so we avoid, right? We avoid doing what we need to do in order to grow further or, or do that. And so that's really, that's how imposter syndrome, like three levels that it affects us, but there's four blocks. And here's what the blocks are, right? Powerlessness, rejection, betrayal, and abandonment. And if you can understand that while everybody's trauma is unique and different, at the end of the day, each trauma leads us to either feel powerless, rejected, betrayed, or abandoned. Okay. And it's usually all of those. And there's a very specific order that we process these things within us. And so, why is that relevant? Because in the present moment, the mind is projecting the past into the present moment. And you have to be aware of where your mind is pulling from the past versus what is the unknown and the unlimited possibility you can step into. And so, what stops us from stepping into the unknown is either I'm afraid that I'm going to be powerless. I'm afraid that I'm going to be rejected. I'm afraid that I'm going to be betrayed, or I'm afraid I'm going to be abandoned. Right. And so, in every moment, we're either taking action to avoid powerless, rejection, betrayal, or abandonment, or we're taking action willing to risk having those experiences, but being curious that there's another thing open. And so it's, if you can understand how to navigate life based on those four things, there's nothing that you really can achieve, but it's not, you also have to learn to go into the body and realize where those beliefs were created and how they show up so that you can bring all of that wisdom into the present moment and make a choice. But at the end of the day, if you can look at your life and say, okay, am I in resistance because I'm afraid of being powerless, because I'm afraid of being rejected, because I'm afraid of being betrayed, or because I'm afraid of being abandoned? And you can honor that, not try to change something to make that go away, but let yourself feel that fear and make a decision that's the opposite of that. There's nothing you can't achieve and accomplish. And it's not that you're not going to have pain, because change is painful, but you can eliminate suffering and you can eliminate disconnection.
I love it. So if people want to follow you, work with you, we'll put your LinkedIn, we'll put your website, anything you want people to know about, if they're resonating with your work.
Yeah, if you're resonating with work, one thing that I value right now is, you know, small group, like really working in small groups, because I think when people come together in community and group, it accelerates and amplifies potential. And yet I also feel that too big, sometimes people get overlooked or they don't get the personalized attention, especially in the work that I facilitate. It's very deep transformational work. And so, I have a group coaching program, but it's small group. And I also work with people one-on-one. And so, after 15 years, I finally have a website up for the past 6 months. I've worked on referral only, right? And I'm very proud of that, right? Like, to be able to work on a referral only is great, but I'm ready to take it to the next level. And after 15 years of asking, like, what is the expression of my whole experience and everything that I've learned, this year I was blessed beyond my wildest dreams in very painful ways with this offering that I have to the world. And I've already been facilitating it this year as a beta program, and the people who have gone through it, they're saying that they've never experienced anything like it. It's the perfect combination of spirituality and mindset work, and the results are just
I have no doubt.
profound.
Daniel, last question.
Yes.
I like to end with this. If someone's listening and these, airwaves have found themselves magically into their earbuds and they are not surrounded by people having conversations like this, they're maybe the odd one out in their family or their community, but they're in an awakening process. What would you say to them?
Trust. Trust. It's easy to think that the people around you don't understand you, but in reality, you don't understand yourself. And what's happening is your higher self has now brought you into a state to create that, because the old version of you has been codependent on your relationships with them to keep you safe in your old identity. But now your old identity and the relationship with them based on that old identity, it's not working for you anymore. And so the comfort and the safety of those relationships, you have to start seeing them in a different way so that you will then have the desire and the questioning and the asking for something more. And so it's painful. Let's not sugarcoat it. Okay. If you try to act like it's not painful or it doesn't matter, it's just going to become more painful. You don't have to suffer. And there's resources everywhere for you.
Love it. That's so good.
Thank you.
You don't understand yourself. Yeah. Own it.
Own it.
I just want to acknowledge for anyone watching on video, this light show that we're having in this conversation is pretty epic. Daniel, thank you for who you are in the world. Thank you for who you've been for me in my life. And I'm just really excited to share this episode.
Thank you. Me too. Big love, everybody. May the force be with you.
Bye, everyone.